we've got a treat this morning. I was asked a while back, since we started doing testimonies, I love that people come and say, hey, can I come and share my story? Well, I was asked this over a month ago, and y'all know me, I totally forgot. So I'm glad he came in this morning and said, hey, remember today I'm telling my story. And I tried to play it off confident. I'm like, yeah, you are. So with that being said, I'm going to ask Jack Delaney to come, and he is going to share with us. I said, how long are you going to be? He said, I can blow the whole hour, maybe 2 minutes. We're going to let the Holy Spirit lead us. So if we get to the sermon, we do. If not, we'll just pick back up there next week. So you come, my brother, and you share your story.
You're sure?
Well, if I'm not, here we go. Let her rip. How about that?
Do it anyhow.
You can stand on the box. Watch your step.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. This happens to be the 21st day of September. In 1959, I took a shot at killing myself on a motorcycle. And did a terrible job of it, too. Most of what took place that day is strictly hearsay. And the reason for that being is I hit my head on something. I was told it was a signpost. That split my head open. I had a severe concussion. And we found out later, this is another part of the story, it's hilarious, that I had broken my neck also. These are things that people didn't survive back in those days. Good Lord's been watching out for my dumb hind end for a long time. I brought a little piece of paper with me that I just found the other day. I knew about this, but I didn't know for sure that on the 4th day of August of 1951, 4 days before my 11th birthday, my father, myself, and my brother were all baptized together in the Lutheran Church up in Nashwauk, Minnesota. It was not snow on the ground, this was August. It was fairly cool, though. I don't think that was the day that I found Jesus. I think it was some time after that. I was confirmed in the Lutheran Church, the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, and I'm thinking, my early memory is really messed up because of the damage I had to my head at one time. So most of what I can tell you about my early childhood and so forth is memories from looking at pictures and photo albums and things of that nature. And I believe I was confirmed around 1954 in the Lutheran Church and attended that up until I graduated from high school. Once I graduated from high school, I was going to be the most famous person in the world, so I got a job with the Alumacraft Boat Company and made the first 2 fiberglass boats in the United States. And when we got done with that, they laid us off because they didn't think they would sell. And I said, well, I got to do something now, so I enlisted in the Air Force. After basic training, I went to tech school in Amarillo, Texas, and took aviation maintenance, of which I carried on through my entire life up until yesterday. I made a mistake over the weekend to helping a fellow move an airplane, so other than that, I didn't actually work on it. Anyhow, I was told on the day that I had this accident that I had taken my motorcycle in town. I was stationed in Waco, by the way, at Connolly Air Base. I volunteered for Thule, Greenland, Tripoli, North Africa, and Johnson Island, and spent 4 years in Waco, but that's all right. I met Patrick's mama that way, and we had 47 years. But anyhow, that day I had taken my motorcycle into a shop downtown Waco that doesn't exist anymore. And they had loaned me a motorcycle, as I was told 7 months later. That's when I got out of the hospital. That I had been loaned a motorcycle to go to the First National Bank downtown to get the $75 to pay for my motorcycle to get it out of the shop. And I think the First National was down around 6th or 7th Street on Washington Avenue. And somehow I got to 14th and Washington, which was way the heck and gone out of the way to go back to the motorcycle shop. And I was told that I was ran over by a 1952 Cadillac Fleetwood. Do you know what a Cadillac Fleetwood is? It's a tank on 4 wheels. It doesn't give. It gives no room to move or anything like that. I was told also that it took nearly 100 stitches to sew my head back together. And I was in the hospital at Connally Air Base for about 3 weeks while that head healed up, and they finally took the plastic tubes out of there, which was draining fluids and stuff. I think my brain left at that time, I'm not sure. It was close. And they had sent me back to duty. And I got to the barracks, everybody slapped me on the back, everybody said, hey, glad to hear you're here, and so forth and so on, and says, we're going to go play football, why don't you come with us? I said, okay, so I put on shorts and a t-shirt. Walked out the door, and an ambulance pulled up in front of the barracks. Guy got out of the ambulance and says, does anybody know who Airman Delaney is? That's me. Don't move. Why not? We're going to put you on this stretcher and we're going to take you to the hospital. You have a broken neck. I said, oh, that's nice to know now. And so they got me on the stretcher, put sandbags around my head, got me back to the hospital. And I don't remember how long it was after that, but eventually the hospital's ambulance carried me back out to the runway there and put me on a medical evac airplane and sent me to San Antonio, to the big Air Force hospital down there. And originally they put traction on my neck. They said they thought they could get the bone to straighten out. Now this also explains why when I first woke up in the hospital, nothing on the right side of my body worked. My arm didn't move, my leg didn't move, I couldn't feel anything, and I couldn't get out of bed, I couldn't do anything. I just had to lay there and mess myself constantly. That bone that had broken, had a piece broke out. I finally saw an x-ray of it. Had a piece broke out of it. It was rotated slightly and pinched. It didn't cut the spinal cord. If it cut the spinal cord, I wouldn't be standing here right now. I'd been up with Jesus someplace, I think, because I think I'd accepted him by that time. You have to accept somebody when you get involved in something like that. Anyhow, they put me in traction with a leather harness around my chin and around the back of my head. And after a couple of weeks of that, with a 35-pound weight hanging off of there, stretching my neck back, I was already 6'6". What did I need to get taller for? And I punched my bed button one day. I was tired of looking at the ceiling. And the guy come in and said, what's the matter? And I said, my teeth hurt so bad, I'm having headaches and everything else because this leather strap was jamming my mouth together. And he said, oh, we've got a problem. We're going to fix that tomorrow. And I said, oh, good. So the next day they carried me down to the operating room. They drilled 2 holes in my head. I already got enough holes in my head. I don't need any help. And they put these holes, I can still feel the dent right there and another one right here. And they put these ice tongs, so that's what they look like. They were chrome-plated though. They put these tongs in my head, and then they hung that weight on there. That did away with the leather strap, and so, oh boy, my teeth started feeling good. And that night, about the time I went to sleep, the tongs jumped out of the holes, grabbed my scalp, which had been repaired and put back together with 100 and some odd stitches, and wrapped it all back up at the top of my head. And I don't remember what I said, but it was not very appropriate. Yeah. But I did get the attention of the orderlies, and they came in, and he looked down at me, and one of them passed out, and the other one said, we got to do something about that. I said, of course we got to do something about it. My head's all wounded up at the top. They undid it, put the leather strap back on. The teeth immediately started hurting again. And the next day, we went back downstairs. Now they wanted to drill 2 more holes and put a bigger set of tongs in, which they did. And I got to live with those for nearly 3 months. And every day this photographer come in and took pictures. And I said, what are all these pictures about? Well, we need a photographic history of all these things that we're doing. We ain't never done this before. And I said, oh God, that really made me feel good right then and there. And I said, okay. So after 3 months, they decided one day, we're going to put you in a full body cast. I said, what does that do? He says, it allows you to stand back up. And I said, well, after 3 months of laying on it, y'all know what a striker frame is? It's a 6-foot bed that's 18 inches wide. This is more than 18 inches. And it was on a frame that's supposed to be rotated to where you could lay on your face, I was longer than the frame. I couldn't get turned over. So 3 months. At one time, I knew how many holes were in a piece of acoustical tile. I can't tell you what it is today, but at one time I could, because that's all I could see. Well, when they finally put me in the body cast, the orderlies came in and said, what would you like to do? I said, I'd like to go to the bathroom like a human being for a change. Said, you think you can stand up? I said, well, heck yeah, I can stand up. I'm 19 years old now. I'm bulletproof. That didn't be true, so they said, okay, got 2 guys out there, one on each side. Put your feet on the floor. I put my feet on the floor. Said, try standing up. I stood up. Think you can go to the bathroom? I said, well, yeah, 1 step. And I was flat on my face out in the middle of the floor. They picked me up, put me back in the bed. That was the end of that for a while. I eventually got to where I could move around. And when I finally got that way, they said, okay, we're going to send you to the ambulatory ward, which that's going out of the main hospital, out into an annex hospital. And I was in a ward with 85 other people in all different forms of casts. For some reason, the Air Force had the ability to break every bone in your body at some point in time. And the fella in the next bed to me hadn't been hit by a train on a motorcycle and was still alive. God was watching out for him also. He didn't have legs that worked at that time, but he could run on crutches faster than I could walk. Then they walked in one day and said, well, you can go home for 30 days if you want to. I said, neat. I need a phone. I got to call my dad and have him get me an airplane ticket, because I hadn't been paid in all this time either by the Air Force. So I called my dad and I said, can you go to the airport in Minneapolis and get me an airplane ticket so I can come home for 30 days? He said, what you coming home for? I said, they're letting me out of the hospital. What are you doing in the hospital? I said, you didn't know? Didn't know what? I broke my neck. Dead to silence on the other end. Pretty soon Dad says, I'll go down and get the ticket right now. You come home. I get home. Mom and Dad were there. and the preacher from the Lutheran church was there. He was a retired full bird colonel that was a chaplain, and he had connections with the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. So when I went back to duty eventually and I went back to the hospital, I had a stenographer come in once a week and dictate letters to him to send to my folks so they would know exactly what was going on. That was pretty neat. I thought I was pretty important at that time, but that was just me. Anyhow, the total time frame in the hospital came out to right at 7.5 months. Now, prior to that accident, I had gotten a leave of absence from tech school for 15 days where I went home. This was in the latter part of July or the first part of August. I'd gone home for 15 days. I know that I had done that because I got a picture of me in the front yard of my grandparents' house with my grandpa and grandpa standing on each side of me. And when I went back to, now I'm getting the story mixed up now because we're dealing with an 85-year-old mind. Don't forget about that now. Is it 6 years ago that I found Ann? About that? Yeah, I have a cousin in Spokane that he and I tried to find out why we could never find any of my grandparents' brothers. We knew their names, but we never could locate them. Well, he finally gets contact of a family named Winger. So apparently the name Delaney, we finally found out, it appears that the name Delaney comes from a man that had got killed in a logging accident that my grandfather was the superintendent of. And my grandfather took that man's name, William Delaney, or Daniel Delaney. So that's how we wound up being Irish, through a logging accident. His name apparently was Winger to begin with, which is Swiss, which means that's why we can now explain that he spoke fluent German. He knew that as grown up in Switzerland. Anyhow, in finding out this about my grandfather, my cousin said, I have a first cousin that's called Jet Aviatrix. An aviatrix is a lady pilot, all right? Jet Aviatrix, a lady pilot, flies jet airplanes. So I had my DNA done. She's not my first cousin, she's my daughter. And we have a good meeting. Patrick always said something about it. He says, I wonder what it would look like if I had a sister. Now he knows. Looks like my mama. Anyhow, we got a good relationship going there. Since then, I have gotten my private pilot's license. I've got a commercial pilot's license. I had my own aviation business for years. And in the 8,000 flying hours that I did testing airplanes, working primarily on agricultural airplanes, that's how I got to meet Mr. Davis back there, working on crop dusters. How many years has that been there? I know. Anyhow, all this started taking place 66 years ago now, come to think of it, 1959. Anyhow, in all that flying time that I had, I did a lot of test flying on the airplanes that I worked on. And in them, about 4,000 hours of that was test flying. I had 4 forced landings. Do you know the difference between a good landing and a perfect landing? A good landing you walk away from. A perfect landing is when the airplane's reusable. I had a reusable landing one day off of 3rd Street down close to the airport that I had my shop at. And those of you that deal with agriculture know that when they plow a field, the furrows run in one direction. And I landed across the furrows. Hey, the airplane was still reusable when I got done. And I walked out to the road there on Farm to Market 3400, and a black limousine, 4-door limousine, standing there on the highway. And this guy in a full business suit comes out and says, "What are you doing, boy?" I said, "I had to land this airplane in this field." He says, "What are you carrying in that airplane?" I said, "Well, I was carrying me, nothing else." This is a member of the DEA. You want to know what I was carrying in that airplane? So I had to explain that. And then he wanted to know if he could help me, and I said, "Yeah, if you think you can get it out of them furrows and back out on the road, we'll see if we can't make it run again." And he did. He helped me get it out to the highway. Now, after all that fun in my life, sometime in 2017, and if I remember right, it was Halloween evening, I had got sick during the day, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker. And I finally, did I tell you, William, to get Gina? And the neighbor lady was a nurse, Gina Porter. I said, "Get Gina over here, I don't feel good." And she came over there, and she took one to look at me, and she said, "You're definitely sick, we need to call an ambulance." And that's when Patrick found out that I was sick and whatnot, because if it hadn't been for him then coming into the bedroom and helping him get some clothes on me and getting me to the ambulance, and the ambulance said that I was sick, and what that amounted to is I had contracted double pneumonia, but I think I had a bloodstream infection, and I don't remember too much about the entire month of November at all, other than at one point I remember a fellow coming in a cowboy hat and a big belt buckle, poking holes in me, draining fluid off of me because I was getting choked down. They had told Patrick that they had given me, I think, a 5% chance of living. And when I came through all of that, I just told them, I said, "You guys haven't never worked on a hard-headed Swede before, have you?" So I made it through that too. So the good Lord's been watching out for me a pretty good while. I'm going to try not to get involved in things of that nature anymore for the short period I got left. I have other stories, but I think we'll leave them alone because I don't think I can tell them in this company. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just say one last thing. I'm no good at saying prayers, but I found one the other day, and if you'll bear with me, it said, "Heavenly Father, help me be a light today. Open my heart to others. Let my works be kind, my actions be thoughtful, my presence be healing, and help me see people like you see them." Amen.